Okay. So I just wanted to say thank you for joining us for this program about horror films. My name is Sarah. I'm a librarian here at Middle Country, and this is my colleague Nicole.
Hi, everybody.
And so the format that we're going to just do here is that we are going to talk about some of the movies that we chose. And there'll be a brief intermission where our other colleague Lucas has recorded some of his favorites, and then we'll play that. And then we'll just wrap it up with some more titles. And if you guys just want to type anything in the chat about movies you recommend or what you think of the movie, please do. We'll just get started here. So let me just share my screen. There we go. Okay, so all right, so let me just okay. So I believe this movie Nicole picked. So if you
Yep,
want to just
I will start. And I just want to briefly apologize if I go into too much detail or not enough detail. But 28 days later, I had never seen before. I have actually not seen any of these movies I'm going to talk about before. I was never a big horror movie person, but I seem to have changed, and now I am. So 28 Days Later, which is rated R. It was produced in 2002, and it has Cillian Murphy in it, Chris Eccleston, who's like my favorite, and Brandon Gleeson, who's another favorite. So this movie starts with a group of animal rights activists who break into a lab to rescue monkeys that are being experimented on. The activists ignore the warnings from a scientist that's in the lab that the monkeys are contagious. And as a result, when they let the monkeys out, they get attacked. And then 28 days later, Jim, who's played by Cillian Murphy, he wakes up in a hospital after being in a coma from a bicycle accident. And when he wakes up, he realizes there's nobody else around. The hospital is empty, and he walks around the city. There's nobody. It's very creepy. And so London's deserted, and he finally manages to find a couple of survivors, and they travel together to Manchester. And they pick Manchester because a group of British military personnel are sending out a broadcast offering protection to any survivors. So they end up going there, and then they find out there's really a different reason why were lured there. And I did really enjoy this movie, but I have to say it was one of the few movies that was almost too real. So it kind of bothered me in places, but I did enjoy it very much.
okay. All right. So the next movie that we're going to discuss, hold on if I can, is the Alien movie with the franchise. So there, you can see here that there's 6 movies in the franchise, and then there's also a crossover with Predator. I personally happen to love the Alien series, but I'm just going to strictly talk about the first Alien movie. It is rated R. It actually premiered in 1979. It's directed by Ridley Scott, and it's a classic sci-fi space horror movie. I feel like it's one of the first of its kind. It sort of started this whole genre. So what happens is a commercial spaceship Nostromo receives a distress call from an unknown ship on an unknown planet. And it's a commercial ship, so they don't really have to reply, but I think there's like a sort of code of ethics. So they go in. There's a lot of like grumbling because they're done with their job. They just want to go home and get paid. But it seems there might be an alternative motive by someone on board to actually go to this distress call. So when they land, of course, this is deserted. They go into this ship, and the ship is deserted. And what they discover is that the ship's pilot is not there anymore. And there's a large chamber that contains thousands of these like egg-like objects. So of course, you're creeped out. You don't know what's happening. And then that's like maybe the first half. And the second half, you're introduced to this alien species known as the xenomorphs, is what they're called. And then Ripley, who is played by Sigourney Weaver, who is my absolute favorite, and the crew deal with this new and alien. So I'm not going to give any spoilers away, but I do want to say, um, it's rated R. There are some scenes. It's not super gory. It's not violent. Well, you think it's violent, but it's funny. It's really more atmospheric. There's a sense of dread. There's obviously you're scared for them. You don't know what's happening, and it's more like what's implied. So you see, I think the alien is only like in one or two, three shots of the movie. So it's surprising, and I have to say, I think the future movies are probably definitely more explicit in their violence. So I think this is more creepy, more atmospheric. It's definitely something to watch. Tom Skerritt is in it. Ian Holmes is in it. And if you haven't seen it, I really think you guys should, because even though it's older, it's still a groundbreaking film. So, and also Prometheus is one of my favorite films. I think it's one of the better Alien films in that franchise. I don't know. Did you see this movie, Nicole?
I saw the original Alien maybe, I don't know, a really long time ago with my dad. But I don't think I've seen any of the other ones.
Did you like it?
I did. I remember liking it, but kind of being like grossed out. But my parents love those movies.
Oh,
Yeah.
I feel like almost because it's like from 1979, like this grossness won't be as strong because we're like, oh, I can tell that's not, you know what I mean? It's like not as done up to par as like today's graphics and everything, but it's not done poorly. So I do think that, like, it should be seen. But okay,
Yeah.
so that is Alien. Let's move on to the next one.
Ooh, so this was the first movie I watched in preparing for this program. So it was really like my first horror movie. And I have to say, I actually really loved it. It's kind of like a comedy monster movie. It premiered in 1981 and was directed by John Landis. It is rated R. So the premise is, in the very beginning, two friends, American friends, are backpacking through Europe, and they're in the English moors, and they keep being told to avoid the moors. And of course, they don't listen. And but first they end up going to a really weird, like, pub. All the locals were creeping them out, so they kind of left and decided to cut across the moors. While they're out there, they are attacked by a wild animal, and Jack dies, and the other one wakes up 3 weeks later in the hospital. So after he wakes up, he starts seeing his friend who died, Jack, kind of like in various states of decay. He's kind of like a zombie, just decaying. And Jack tells Dave that he's going to turn into a werewolf, and the only way to stop it is to kill himself. That way he won't hurt anybody else, or kill anybody else. So I have to say that, I've seen werewolf movies before, but this one has one of the best werewolf transformation scenes I've ever seen. It's kind of long, but why he's changing, it's very funny. But it's over the top, the whole movie, but it's very funny, and I definitely recommend it.
Okay. Yeah, I really like that movie too. If I recall, it's funny, but there is a little bit of goriness to it, right?
There is. It's not too gory. Like, to me, the grossest part was the werewolf transformation, because like they show like the hands, like breaking, and the whole thing. And there are some other parts that are kind of like, but there's nothing like too gross.
Okay. All right. So going on. We have Brightburn.
Okay. So this one, I don't really know if it could be called a horror movie, but I added it in here. It came out last year, 2019. It's rated R. It has Elizabeth Banks in it. David Denman and Jackson A. Dunn plays their son. So the whole premise behind it is basically it's imagine what would happen if Superman came to Earth in his spaceship, was adopted by a family, and then when he finds out he has powers, he rejects his humanity and starts terrorizing the town he lives in, which is Brightburn. So this movie, while it's not overall like gory, it's violent, and the few scenes that there are gore, they're really gory. But I actually really enjoyed it. I thought it was a good premise, like the alternate superhero.
And also just a note that all these movies are available to take out at Middle Country. So you know, so we do have Brightburn. Okay, so the next movie is The Cabinet of Dr. Caligari, right? Am I saying that right, Nicole?
Yes. Yeah, so this one, it's a silent German film from 1920, so it's not rated. It does have music, which enhances the movie, and it does have intertitles, so like you'll see the people talking and then they'll kind of tell you what they say, but there's no actual, you're not hearing anyone speak. The film is an example of German expressionism, and it's, for the time, it's kind of creepy. Like it's hard to think that someone in 1920, like they came up with this. So the plot is, it's mainly told from the view of this man, Francis, who lives in the small German village. And they have a carnival come to the village, and there is a sleepwalker there. And the sleepwalker has lived in the cabinet for his entire life. And I guess he's probably, I don't know, in his 20s or 30s, it's kind of hard to tell. He's lived in the cabinet sleeping his entire life, but occasionally if you wake up and ask him a question, he will answer you, and everyone thinks he knows everything. Someone goes to him and asks, "How long will I live?" And the gentleman is told till dawn, and then he's found dead the next morning. So the suspicion turns on to the sleepwalker and the man who is his master, who is Caligari. So Francis's friend is the one who was killed. So Francis is trying to figure out what it is. But there's a little twist at the end. You don't really know what's real and what's not. What's, if they're all insane or one of them's insane but that's The Cabinet of Dr. Caligari. And it's short. It's like 70 minutes. So if you're not used to watching silent films, it's kind of a good thing to start with because it's short.
Are there subtitles on the bottom?
No, no, they have something called intertitles, which is so you'll just see them talking to each other, and then a few minutes later they'll just put something on the screen that says what they were talking about.
Oh, okay.
And the scenery that they did, I guess because it was all in a studio, is all very cool. All the buildings are they're all lopsided. All the doorways are not straight. The houses are all crooked. So it's just a very cool scenery.
All right. Okay, so next is coming up. Okay, so we have The Conjuring and Conjuring 2. Karen, I'm sure you saw this, but for those who didn't, this is 2013 film starring Patrick Wilson, Vera Farmiga. I'm sure Steph knows how to pronounce that. What is it?
I think Farmiga or Farmiga.
Farmiga, okay. And
Farmiga.
Ron Livingston, and it's directed by James Wan. So I have to say this is I like this movie a lot. It's spooky. So this tells a horrifying story of Ed and Lorraine Warren, who are world-renowned paranormal investigators, and they were called to help a family living on this secluded farmhouse. So after witnessing this possession themselves, the Warrens decided to bring evidence to the church, asking for assistance in this sort of possession. The Catholic Church and the Warrens intervened to help fight for the family's, problem. And I don't want to give too much away because I feel like there's some Formiga. Thank you, Steph. I knew Steph would know. But I feel like there were a lot of jump scares. It wasn't very gory. So I think, once again, it's like spooky. It's good to watch in the dark. You'll get a little bit of, frights. And The Conjuring 2 takes place in England, and it's the same Patrick Wilson and Vera Farmiga help a single mom of 4. And what happens in England is that they sort of think this kid staged this possession for attention, and they find evidence kind of to that, but then they realize that it's true and that this family is possessed somehow. And then there's sort of like an offshoot to the Conjuring series called The Nun. I don't know if you guys know that, but there's like that creepy nun. And she shows up in this film, and then she gets her own movie. But also, Conjuring 2 has sort of the jump frights, and it's very scary, but not gory. So if you're into possession movies, I highly recommend these two. So, okay. The Nun is terrifying, Stephanie. The makeup is very creepy. Okay, so classic Dawn of the Dead.
Yes. So this is a movie I had seen before because for some reason my mom, who hates zombie anything, loves this movie.
Okay.
So this is from 2004. It's rated R. It has Ving Rhames in it, Mekhi Phifer, Ty Burrell. And Ty Burrell I'm used to always seeing as like a bald, like very buttoned up man, and he's totally not in this movie. So it was a little fun to see him as a brutish security guard. So basically what it is a bunch of people. There's a nurse, a policeman, a married couple, and a few other survivors. They head to the mall when there's a zombie attack.
You always go to the mall.
Yeah. And it's like one of those super malls. So of course it has like everything in it. So they take refuge in the mega Midwestern shopping mall, and they hide there successfully at first, but then the zombies break in, and they have to figure out how to escape the mall alive. And they eventually, most of them do escape, and their goal is to get onto the water, to get onto a boat, a sailboat, and sail to a uninhabited island. And at the end, there's video camera and video footage of what happens when they get to that island. So it's a fun movie.
All right, zombies are one of my fears too, Steph, but I love zombie movies.
Yeah, I love zombie movies.
Yeah, it's always a good time. Okay, so the next movies we're going to talk about, I love these movies. Okay, it's called The Descent and The Descent 2, right? Follow up. This is an English movie, and when I didn't know what to expect. When this came out, I saw it and it scared the bejesus out of me. So The Descent is rated R, and I'm just going to talk a little bit about the movie premise. So it's about 6 friends who go on this spelunking trip to try to sort of come together again. Like they separated, they got a little distant, and nothing brings a group of gals closer than going in a cave. So one of the characters, her name is Sarah. She went through a really hard time. She went on this white water rafting trip with one of the other girls, her friend Juno, and Sarah's husband and daughter. On the way back, unfortunately, they got into a car accident. Just Sarah and her husband and daughter were in the car, and Sarah's the only one that survived this accident. So she was traumatized, and then Juno decides to do the spelunking trip. So we have Sarah, Juno, Beth, Sam, Rebecca, and then this new girl, Holly, right? So they go to the Appalachian Mountains of North Carolina, because of course, right? Juno finds this like fun spelunking cave maze thing, and they go in, and then of course it collapses, trapping them. And then in true horror movie fashion, Juno, the storyline goes that Juno goes in this unknown cave system that she heard about. It's not mapped. So basically, no one knows they're there, and no one can get to them because it's not really well known. So everyone's freaking out. It's underground, and this is where I personally got scared because I'm like, I would literally like someone would have to. I'd be like Nicole. It was me and Nicole in this cave. I'd be like, Nicole, you have to kill me, and she'd want to kill me because I'd be freaking out. I'd probably
I'd be happy to kill you.
I would beg you. I'd like just kill me because I'm scared to death. Because it's like literally pitch black. It's tiny. You can't move. You don't know where you're going, right? So just imagine that. So Sarah, they're in this like cavern right now, and Sarah, the other character, wanders off to kind of just like seeing what's around, right? And then she catches this movement, and it's some humanoid creature drinking at a pool, and it scampers away. Now they say when you're in a cave and your senses are gone, you can hallucinate, right? So you don't know, like you hallucinating? What is it? What's going on? Okay, so you're left with this. The rest of the movie is sort of what happens to these 6 women in the cave and the creatures, and of course, nothing good is gonna happen to these women. I tell you, there is blood, it's gory, there's like weird creatures, you got like horrible like scenes where people are like literally like fighting through these little holes and you don't know what's gonna happen. That in itself was terrifying to me. It made me really queasy. And then of course they come out of this little hole and then there's like a creepy creature and you're like, yeah. So I love this movie because I was like, the whole entire time. I'm not going to give away the ending, but if you want a really good and different horror movie, I suggest this. The Descent 2 is good as well. And what's interesting, it came out 4 years later, but it takes only place 2 days after the first movie. So you're not really, jumping around. It's like sort of similar characters, maybe. And they go back into the cave system to look for survivors. Are there any? I don't know, but I suggest everyone take these out. It's a good time, and there's different sort of psychological and physical horror to it. So
I'm just looking at the graphic for part 2 and seeing the humanoid things, and they are terrifying.
Oh yeah, they are.
Wow.
Yeah. So, but it's a good time. So let's go on to the next film. Oh,
Okay. So another classic, Dracula with Bela Lugosi from 1931. It's pretty true to the actual book Dracula. A naive real estate agent goes to visit Count Dracula and succumbs to his will. And then the two of them head to London so Dracula could have more victims. And it's, I'm not really a fan of Bela Lugosi. I've seen a couple of movies with him lately, and I'm not impressed with his acting. And I have to say, the acting in this movie by all of the cast is kind of awful, but it's fun to see the original Dracula. This is the movie that people say started the horror genre, so it's nice to see it and then to see how it evolved. But there's other, like I prefer, and I'll talk about this at the end, but I actually prefer the original Nosferatu to this one. But yeah, I'm not really a fan of this movie, but that's why I talked about it, because it's a, thank you, Steph. Yeah, I don't like Bela Lugosi's acting or anybody else, but I think it's also the time of the acting, when it took place. It's just, I don't really have anything nice to say about it, sorry.
Well, it's good to know. Todd Browning did this, but he also did the movie Freaks, which is also very sort of unsettling. Wanted, that's a completely different film, but okay.
Yeah.
Let's continue. Classics.
All right, so I don't really have to say much besides Bruce Campbell, because he's awesome, and that's why I watched these. I had seen in high school Army of Darkness, but I had never seen the Evil Dead and Evil Dead 2. So I watched them in order again to see, and it was nice to see how Ash evolved into the character he is now, because even now in the last couple of years they had Ash versus the Evil Dead TV show.
Yes.
which I have not seen yet because I wanted to watch these first.
Uh,
So in the original Evil Dead, which is 1981, and all of these three were directed by Sam Raimi. So in the first movie, five friends travel to a cabin in the woods that's supposedly there's people living there, but it really doesn't look like there's anyone living there. But they find in the basement a book that's made out of human flesh, and for some reason think it's a good idea to read from it, and they find like a tape recorder and they play the tape recorder of someone reading it. So as they do it, demons come out from nowhere and they start possessing and killing everybody. And Bruce Campbell is the hero of the story. And then the second movie, Evil Dead 2, takes place as soon as the first one ends. It's like at the exact moment. Although I have to say they did change the backstory in the second one. So in the original one, there's five friends in the cabin, but when they do Evil Dead 2, there's only two people there, and it's like a nice cabin. So there's that, which is kind of confusing. I don't know why they did that. But then Army of Darkness, it takes place right after Evil Dead 2, and Ash, Bruce Campbell, is sucked into a time vortex, and he ends up transported, he thinks, to 13 AD, where he must retrieve it's called the Necronomicon, which is the book bound in flesh, and battle an army of dead so he can return home. Now, all three of the movies, they get more ridiculous as you go through them. Like Army of Darkness is just a really silly movie. Evil Dead and Evil Dead 2 are not as silly, but they're very gross. Like there's, the demons are gross and whatever happens with them are gross, but they're also funny. So I actually enjoyed watching them because, again, Bruce Campbell.
Yeah.
And I actually was glad to see that they show the origin of his chainsaw arm.
Oh, yeah.
Because he gets that in like the second one.
Yeah, they are cult classics for sure.
Yes, definitely.
Okay, so let's go on. I feel like, okay, yeah. So the next one is Final Destination.
Karen, I believe so. They all kind of, certain parts of it all kind of melded together, but I believe that was the one with the hand across the floor. All right, so Final Destination. Yeah, I had never seen this when it came out in the movies, and someone told me that I should watch it, and it's actually not bad. It was premiered in 2000. It's rated R, and Ali Larter's in it. What's his name? Sean William Scott is in it. As you can see in the picture, who's in them. And although I did like it, I said to Sarah, it's really a bunch of whiny teenagers fighting amongst each other and blaming each other for things that happen. So the plot is a group of teenagers with their school. They're going on a trip to Paris, and they all get on the plane, and one of the teenagers has a vision of the plane exploding. So he gets scared and he gets off the plane, and the bunch of people you see behind him followed him off the plane for various reasons. And then death starts to hunt them down one by one. So some of them have visions that it's going to happen. So they're just trying to cheat death. And I believe there are a bunch of sequels to this.
I think there's a lot.
Yeah, I don't know how many, but I know there's a bunch.
Yeah. Okay, so, and this is the one that started it all, so.
Yeah. And it was good. It was fun. It was a fun movie.
Right. Okay, so the next movie is The Frighteners. So I think this is sort of in the same line as American Werewolf in London, where it's sort of like a funny horror film. It is actually starring Michael J. Fox. It's directed by Peter Jackson, who did Lord of the Rings. Surprisingly, it's rated R. I thought this was rated PG or PG-13, but it's not. But this is 1996, so it's a little older. But okay, so Michael J. Fox plays this architect, Frank Bannister. Um, his wife Deborah dies in a car accident. He loses it, so he has this unfinished house that's incomplete that he was working on during this time. And right before the accident, all of a sudden Frank can now see ghosts, right? So he befriends these three ghosts, as you can see in the picture. One is a 1970s gangster named Cyrus. There's a 1950s nerd named Stuart, and the judge, who is a gunslinger from the Old West. So he sort of creates this little racket with these three ghosts where the ghosts inhabit houses. He comes in claiming to exorcise these ghosts, and then, he gets paid to do this. So he sort of is considered like this kind of con man kind of joke around town. But in his town, all of a sudden people start dying. And because he can see these ghosts, he realizes it's this sort of Grim Reaper ghost that they call. And the rest of the movie is sort of figuring out who this Grim Reaper ghost is. There anyone who's living that might be helping him? What happens? There's an FBI agent. There's this sort of love storyline. So it really is more, I put it's more ghostly fun than gore. It's a good time. So if you like fun ghost movies, I would suggest The Frighteners. As Karen said, it is an older movie. People probably forgot about it, but I thought it's up there. It was one of the more enjoyable films. And if you want to be scared but don't want to be too scared, I think this is a movie that you might enjoy. So I think this might be a good time to maybe show Lucas's video. Like I said, our colleague Lucas could not be here tonight, but he is also an avid horror film watcher, and he was happy to make a video of some of his favorite movies. So let's just take a look at that. Let's see here. I'm going to just stop sharing for 1 second and then continue when I get his film up. Let's see. Here we go. All right, so this is Lucas.
Hey everybody, Lucas here.
Can you guys hear?
I can't be there the night that you're actually watching.
Not really. It's low.
Okay.
So I just want to record myself, tell you about a few movies that I like, and give Sarah and Nicole a break. So my first pick for you today is called The Witch. It's from 2015. It's by Robert Eggers, who also made The Lighthouse. So this is a historical, I would call it drama horror, which is really kind of my favorite genre. And its subtitle is A New England Folktale. So it's about a family who were banished from their colony in New England over some sort of religious disagreement. And the father decides we can make it on our own. So they move into the wilderness of this random field in the middle of the woods and try to survive. It doesn't really go well for them. Immediately the drama starts. They start distrusting each other. They think that Thomasin, the daughter who was watching Sam, the baby, they think she might be responsible. They think she wasn't doing a good job watching him, and sort of resentments within the family start building up between the mother and the daughter and the father and all the children. So the beginning and the end kind of have some cheesy moments. I will tell you that within the first 5 minutes, you do see a witch, and it is kind of cheesy, but please don't let that deter you, because the middle is just a very realistic, slow descent into despair, and it's all about the grief they're facing. It's about surviving. The young children are coming of age, and the distrust grows and grows between them. Their faith both helps them stay strong and helps them to turn against each other when they start thinking some witching is going on. It's actually pretty sad. There's a lot of sad family drama in this, but I just love it. The atmosphere is very well done here. So that is The Witch. So next up is Your Next, which is a 2013 movie. It's kind of an ode to traditional slasher movies. It's about this well-to-do family who is meeting for a reunion in their big house in the middle of the woods. You can see where this is going. And it's set up to be a lovely, posh family affair, although there is some sibling rivalry going on. So there are, tensions between, the older, obnoxious brother making fun of the younger, sensitive brother, and the sister who feels like she never gets paid attention to, and it's just a mess. And on the surface, it seems serious, but it's pretty funny and tongue-in-cheek. I love the humor of it. The characters are based on horror movie tropes, I would say. Even these 3 masked killers who are stalking them and killing them one by one, even they get some realism, and you feel like they're real people and not just scary monsters, even though at the beginning they're very mysterious. Of course, there's some hidden background information. This is not just a random killing, but you'll learn why when you watch it. I don't think it's terribly scary, but it is filled with a lot of very well-crafted action, suspenseful scenes. Erin, the main character, is my favorite horror protagonist in any movie I've watched. She consistently surprises you. You're consistently rooting for her. She's so cool. I love her. I love this movie. Moving on, next I have a movie called Good Night Mommy. Sounds very pleasant, doesn't it? It's from 2014. We have these 2 young twins who are living in this modern, luxurious home in the countryside, and they're alone at the beginning, but then their mom comes home from this reconstructive surgery she had. Her head is totally covered in bandages, and she does look freaky. So the kids are a little taken aback at first, and she's acting a little weird. Sometimes she seems nice, sometimes she's very cold and strict, and she sets these weird ground rules like no light coming in the windows and utter silence during the day. The kids have to go outside if they want to play. And the kids start wondering, is that really our mom behind there? And they're young, so their imaginations run wild. And the movie does a great job of putting you in the kids' perspective and seeing through their eyes the distrust they feel in that this woman is not really the mom that they know so well. So again, this is another very slow burn, which it's my kind of thing. It might not be your kind of thing. It takes a long time for anything truly horrific to happen. But when it does, it's really disturbing and really shocking at how these characters can just let go of the love they might have felt for each other before and just be so cruel. There's torture. It's never extremely graphic, but they do have some pretty disturbing or unsettling imagery, I would say. Then, at the very end, there's some information revealed that alters everything that you thought before. You might be able to figure it out if you really analyze, but if you think you figured it out, just enjoy the ride for what it is. The last thing I should mention is that it is in German. I didn't want to say this first because I want you to be interested in the story before you say, oh, it's another language, I'm not going to do that. So the last movie I want to tell you about, you have definitely heard of. It's from 2004, and it's called Saw. So I think this series has a bit of a misconception because it's very well known for its very complicated, over-the-top torture machines and gratuitous gore But the first one is actually a pretty solid and tame thriller horror movie. You have two guys who wake up in a gross, abandoned bathroom somewhere. Everything's rusty, everything's dirty, and they're chained to the pipes on the wall. There's a younger guy named Adam, an older guy named Dr. Gordon, and they have little cassette tapes that tell them what's going on. Essentially, they are trapped here, and Dr. Gordon has to kill Adam by 5 p.m. that day, and they have to figure out what's going on and how they could get out of this situation. So the room around them is filled with little hints and messages, and over the course of the movie, they try to piece together their memories of what happened the day before and memories of a killer who might be the person behind all of this, named the Jigsaw Killer, who chooses victims that he believes are not grateful for their lives or who are mistreating themselves or other people. You have a drug addict, a person who tried to kill themselves, a person who faked sickness to get off of work. Jigsaw thinks these people could use a good dose of gratitude, so he puts them through these torturous, hellish nightmares so that they'll feel great about their lives and live happily ever after. Doesn't usually work out that way. The premise was unique at the time. It's now been copied 1,000 times. It started a trend of torturous, gory movies of the mid-2000s, and it has some good cast members. It has Carrie Elwes, who is from Princess Bride. It has Danny Glover as a cop, one of the cops who is also investigating the Jigsaw Killer, so that's a separate subplot. There's just a lot of mystery involved. It takes its time figuring out all the little details, and the action and the violence just ramps up. But honestly, the gore is not that bad here. A lot of it is suggested. Like, you'll see the face of the person doing something to somebody else. You don't usually see the bloody gore itself. The rest of the series devolves into nonsensical rewriting of the past and plot twists and gratuitous violence. So really, you could just watch the first one and be done with it. The first three are pretty good, and then it really goes downhill, although Saw 6 has some pretty good commentary on the healthcare system in our country. So I would recommend this for the mystery and the suspense. It's really not as gross as some of the later ones would have you think. And that's all I got for you today. So I hope you will check out some of the things I recommended, and I hope that you have a great and spooky October. Have a good one.
Okay, so those are some great picks from Lucas. I hope you guys got a little something from that. And then Nicole and I are just gonna finish with ours, and let me go back to our screen share. Okay, so I just, before Lucas, I wrapped this up, so let's just go to the next one. Okay, so Fright Night was originally done in 1985. There is a remake in 2011 with hunky Colin Farrell. So the first, excuse me, Fright Night is Charlie and his best friend Evil Ed. They watch this show called Fright Night with the star Peter Vincent. In the meanwhile, a new neighbor moved into next door to Charlie, and he sort of pieces together that this new neighbor Jerry is a vampire, and he sort of enlists Peter Vincent to try to help him take him down, right? So that's the first film. The remake has Peter Vincent being played by David Tennant, and he's not a TV show host, he's a magician. And then Jerry is played by Colin Farrell. So, excuse me. They're both very good. There is a little bit of gore, but it is a little bit more spooky. If you like vampire flicks, I would check both of these out. So they're done well. The next one is called Hereditary, but I'm going to take a little bit of a break because I have to get a drink. So I'm going to skip forward to Invisible Man, and Nicole can take it away.
Okay. Yes. So I watched both of these in the same week. The Invisible Man, the 1933, is a classic madman movie. It's based on the novel by H.G. Wells, and Claude Rains plays the Invisible Man, but you don't really see much of him, obviously. The movie starts with a scientist that's already invisible, and he's desperately looking for a way to turn visible again. So he goes to an inn and he rents a room, and just wants to be left alone so he could try to figure out how to make himself visible. But the longer he is invisible, the more insane he becomes. And he, ends up just wanting to revenge, and he's plotting to kill people. The effects are actually very cutting edge for 1933, and they hold up pretty well. I was actually surprised at how well they held up. My only problem with this movie, which I actually enjoyed, was there is one woman, she's like the innkeeper's wife, who just screamed for no reason at all. And she had a really annoying scream. So just like, it was irritating. So it almost made me want to not finish watching the movie. But it was good. I did like it. And then the remake, which is Elizabeth Moss from this year. I know a lot of people didn't like this movie, but I actually really enjoyed it. There are some big plot holes, but there's also a good twist at the end. It is nothing like the original, has very little in common with the 1933 version. I think the only thing that is the same is the Invisible Man, the doctor, is his last name, which is Griffin. I said, but other than that, the entire movie is totally different. So in the new one, Elizabeth Moss is fleeing her abusive and sadistic husband. She escapes to a friend's house, and she's living there for a couple of weeks when she finds out that her husband has killed himself. She does not think this is correct because she starts feeling his presence all over the place. So she suspects that he's still alive, and is just trying to torture her. And her husband had been a leader in the field of optics, and she discovers that he figured out a way to become invisible. So she's still convinced he's dead, and she's just trying to figure out what it is. And it's a very modern version of the H.G. Wells story. But the music and the cinematography in the 2020 version, I think, are amazing, and it really builds suspense throughout the movie.
I agree. It was good. It was a good film. I do apologize for having a little bit of a tickle in my throat. So I'm just going to backtrack for the movies that we had to go over. So let me just. Okay, so maybe it was because Hereditary was up. I was like, So I don't know if anyone saw this film. Kathleen, just also want to say we do see that you are here, and that if you wanted to comment or anything like that, you can always just use the chat feature on the bottom of the screen, and you can talk to us that way. But anyway, so Hereditary was done in 2018, so it's kind of new. It's the same director who did Midsommar. I don't know if you guys saw that film. I honestly didn't know what to expect from this film. I heard many different reactions from it. I did want to see it, but then I heard someone say it wasn't good, so I sort of just put it on the back burner. And it was actually Lucas who said that he enjoyed it and that I should watch it. So I was like, sure, why not? And I have to say, not knowing anything about it, it was a bit of a surprise. There was a few moments where I was like, it's like a horror mind bender, okay? And there are some scenes that will sort of shock you a little bit. It's not gory, but it's a little explicit. All right, there's shocking, so it's not for the faint of heart. I'm just gonna say that. But so this movie stars Toni Collette and Gabriel Byrne, directed by Ari Aster. So this Toni Collette's mom, his name is Ellen, right? She passed away, and then you're there with the funeral and the eulogy, and it's kind of weird. Annie is Toni Collette. She's not very close to her mom. You can kind of tell the way that she does this eulogy and everything. She is a miniatures artist also, and she seems like she's doing a miniature version of her house. So it's not like a dollhouse. It's like she's an actual artist. So she does like these installations, right? They have a 16-year-old son, and then they also have a 13-year-old daughter named Charlie. Now the daughter, it's not made an issue, but she does have genetic disease, the same one. If you guys watch Stranger Things, the character in Stranger Things, he has the same sort of genetic disorder. So you're in this family world. Now you see that the grandma died. You're like, okay, it's kind of weird. Then this other family tragedy strikes this family, and it really throws them for a loop, and everyone becomes unhinged. And you find out that Annie reveals she goes to a bereavement group, and she sort of says that like there's mental illness that runs in the family. There's been issues about the mom and the grandma and all this stuff. So you know this, right? So then there's a woman in the bereavement group that says she knew the mom, and she invites Annie over, and then there's sort of like these things that in this woman's apartment that reminds her of her mother, and she goes, why do you have these things that I've seen in my mother's life, right? So at the same time this is happening, that Annie and the son are starting to sort of have these visions, and you don't know if it's really happening or if it's this mental illness. And then sort of, I don't want to give anything away because it's a really good film, and it makes you think. It's one of those films that make you think. You don't know, like, oh, is this real? Is this not real? What's happening? It takes you on a ride, and you are left wondering, like, I don't know. It's really hard to describe. It's a good film. It is a little shocking. I'm not gonna. It's a sensitive subjects. It's not for the squeamish. It's not gory. There's no monsters, right? So I don't want anybody going into. It's atmospheric. It's creepy. You don't know. Like I said, there are a few explicit scenes. There's a scene of nudity. It's not sexual, but just letting you know. It is rated R. But I think it's a different type of art house horror. So I say give it a go if you want something different. If you want something that will like sort of throw your mind, then get this. I really enjoyed it. And Toni Collette is amazing. Nicole made a comment that Gabriel Byrne is always amazing. He is. So I recommend it. It's really good. The next movies that we recommend are the Insidious series. So there are 4 in this series. I'm not going to go over every single one. I'm just going to talk about the first one. And surprisingly, this is one of the few films that we have that's either not rated or it's PG-13. Okay, so married couple Josh and Renee Lambert have 2 sons, Dalton and Foster, and a little baby girl. They moved into a home. Dalton is drawn to the attic and is frightened by something in the shadows, right? And then all of a sudden he gets sick. So you're like, what's happening? I don't know. 3 months later, they can bring him home, right? That's a long time to have a sick child in the hospital. They buy a new house, they move, and all of a sudden, weird, creepy things start happening in the new house, right? So the mom comes to stay with them, and the mother has a sort of dream about this person in Dalton's room. She's like, what's happening? So she's like, okay, this is not normal. I'm getting professional help. The professional help is this woman called Elise Rayner. She's an old friend and a psychic, and also these 2 paranormal investigators, Specs and Tucker. So Elise senses a presence in the house and then sees a demonic red-faced figure, right? It's creepy. What is this? We don't know. But Elise explains that Dalton's not in a coma. He was not in a coma, but he was born with the ability to travel mentally into the astral plane. I don't know if you guys remember this movie at all, but you're like, what? So this kid has been going to the astral plane in his sleep, and he wakes up thinking it's a dream, right? Okay, this traveled too far, and he became lost in a purgatory realm called the Further. All right, stay with me. So this place is inhabited by tortured souls. You don't want to be here. It's creepy, and he's alone in this place called the Further, right? So because this kid is stuck in this, his body becomes a vessel for spirits to come through into our world, right? So Josh, the father's like, yeah, this is BS. But then he sort of like sees this demon that this woman describes, pictures that the kid drew. He's putting everything together. I don't want to give too much away. There's no real spoilers to this, but so it's the rest of the movie is about how do they get this kid back. The son, Josh gets involved, the father. And I'm not going to give away the ending, but Insidious has a lot of jump scares. That's why it's rated PG-13. It's not gory. So if you don't like blood and guts and all that stuff, don't worry. But if you like to be scared, like there's a lot of sudden spooky things that happen, and it gets you. It really does. I would say watch this. And then I have seen the other Insidious movies, and they are all similar. So I would say give this a go. This would be good to pair up with what was that? I'm sorry, there's so many. The Conjuring, Insidious, and there's another movie we're going to talk about called Sinister. The three of those are like a good trilogy to watch. But yeah, so there's 4 in that one. So that is all that. Hold on. We talked about the Invisible Man. And now Nicole will talk about Let the Right One In.
So yes, Let the Right One In is a Swedish movie from 2008 that's based on the novel of the same name. And I'm sure I'll butcher his name, but John Ajvide Lindqvist, kind of right. And actually there was a American version that was put out in 2010 called Let Me In. And they're both very good. They're very similar, but I just happen to prefer the Swedish version over the American. So in a suburb of Stockholm, there's a 12-year-old boy named Oscar who is like an outcast at school, and he's bullied by the kids in his class. He befriends a new neighbor that lives in his apartment complex named Ellie. She's a 12-year-old girl that only comes out at night, and that's when they meet out on the playground at night. And the person that Ellie is living with, who you assume is her father, is a serial killer who is going around draining the blood of his victims to supply Ellie with blood. So she's, you kind of know right away that she's not a normal child. But her and Oscar become friends. They kind of fall in love, and Ellie becomes protective of him, and he knows she's a vampire, and they build a relationship, and then she helps him out with his little problem at school. Yeah. The American version is, I think Chloe Moretz. She is in the American version, and like I said, it's still very good. I just happen to prefer the Swedish one.
I agree with you. I saw both, and I like the Swedish one better too. All right, so the next movie we're going to talk about is The Prodigy. Now, I don't know if anyone saw this movie. I took this out. I didn't know what it was about. It's recent. It's 2019 film, and it stars Taylor Schilling. If you don't know who she is in Orange is the New Black. And so I don't want to give too much away, but it sort of tells you what it's about. So So the movie starts out showing that a serial killer named Edward Skarka is fatally shot during a police raid of his farmhouse in Ohio, right? And at the same time, lo and behold, this couple, Sarah and John, another Sarah, Sarah and John give birth to their son Miles in Pennsylvania. Okay. So their son shows extreme wisdom, intelligence from a very early age. He can speak fluently before he's a toddler. So everyone's like, oh, he's a genius. When Miles turns 8, Sarah and John begin noticing a lot of changes in him, often being these violent and unsettling changes. So, what's going on here? So Miles ends up seeing Arthur Jacobson, expert on rebirth and reincarnation. And he's like, something's going on with your son. He can speak Hungarian. Well, what is this? So while he's seeing this guy, he's still doing weird things, right? The husband is like, this is not normal. I'm creeped out by my own son. The wife, Sarah, is like, no. John is like, I'm out of here. I'm getting out. So he leaves the house, which of course leaves Sarah alone with her son, her creepy son. And there are lots of creepy things that are happening in the film. So I don't want to, like I said, I don't want to give too much away, but I want to tell you guys about it. So what happens is he's still seeing this guy about reincarnation. More and more things are coming up, right? And then while he's in these sort of appointments, Sarah, the mom, finds stuff in his room, and then she is becoming more and more alarmed. She's going, oh no, like, what is this? What's happening? Who is my son, right? So creepy son Miles gets out of seeing this shrink because he doesn't want to be there, and also because shrink is sort of like getting on to what he's doing. So at this point, Sarah and John decide to send Miles away to a hospital because they feel like something's wrong with him. They don't really know what, but they think he's like a psychopath. So on this route to going to this hospital, they get into an accident. Miles and the mother, of course, are okay, but the husband is hurt. He's in the hospital. And then the end of the movie is I'm not going to give it away. I'm not going to discuss it because I was like, what? So this was a real, now I'll say hidden gem, but I was surprised at how creepy it was. So I will say it's gory. It's not super gore, but there are some gory images in it. And there are also jump scares. So it's a little bit of both. So it's also, I just watch it. You'll like it. That's all I have to say. It's creepy. It's good. All right. So next film, hold on, is Ready or Not.
So I have to say, I actually really enjoyed this movie. It came out last year. It's rated R. It has Samara Weaving in it, Adam Brody, and Andie MacDowell, who I normally am not a fan of Andie MacDowell in anything, but I did like her in this. And it's just a very fun movie. It's violent, but it's fun and it's funny. So the plot is Samara Weaving and Adam Brody's characters, they get married. Adam's family, I can't remember their actual names in the movie, sorry. Adam's family, they have like a gaming empire that they've built. So they're super rich and, they basically could do whatever they want. Every time there's a wedding, the bride or groom that's marrying into the family has to play a game at midnight on the wedding night, which you pull a card out of this weird box that tells you what game you're going to play. So it could be chess, it could be Old Maid, it could be, any kind of game, a board game, a card game. So when the bride pulls the card, she gets something called hide and seek. And she doesn't know about any of this. Her husband, her fiance, didn't tell her what would happen, just that she would have to play a game. And she's instructed by her new husband to stay hidden until dawn in order to win the game. which, you know, she does not taking this seriously. So she's like, you know, she hides for like 5 minutes and then comes out. But then she soon realizes that the entire family is trying to kill her, because there's a legend that if, you know, they don't finish this game and kill her, then they'll all die. So they're hunting her in the house with guns and axes and crossbows. And it's very funny. It's a lot of dark humor. It doesn't take itself too seriously. The characters, some of them are like over the top creepy, and then some of them are just normal, you know, people trying to just, you know, fit in with the family. But I definitely suggest it. And it's not really a horror movie, but it's an action suspense thriller comedy.
Okay, that sounds good.
I enjoyed it. I'd watch it again.
Okay, and it's funny, you said.
Yes.
Okay, nice. All right, so the next film is Rosemary's Baby.
So I have to say that although I had always known that this movie was out there, somehow I'm very good at, you know, ignoring spoilers. I never knew actually what it was about, except that there was a baby sort of involved, you know. So the movie is directed by Roman Polanski. It has Mia Farrow in it, John Cassavetes, Ruth Gordon, and Rosemary and her husband Guy. They move into a creepy apartment building in Manhattan that has like a, you know, a creepy history. They become friends with their neighbors, this older couple who live down the hall. And, you know, Rosemary, the husband Guy he decides he really likes this couple and he starts hanging out with them. And then Rosemary becomes pregnant, and, you know, she's seeing the doctors that her neighbors and her husband want her to see, and she's drinking the drinks that they want her to drink and eating the food they want her to eat. So, you know, Rosemary finally realizes that something is wrong, and she tries to run away, and is brought back. And then, you know, there's, I guess, like, I'm sure everyone besides me in the world knew what this was like about, but it was, you know, there's witches in it, there's a coven. But I did really like it. I thought it was good.
Okay. Well, like you, I have not seen it. So I know there was like a remake TV show with Rosario Dawson.
Okay.
Yeah.
I would never really consider it a horror movie, but it's like one of the top horror movies. So
it's a classic, like The Exorcist, like Karen said, Psycho, you know.
Yeah.
All right. So Carrie, right? Okay, so all right, I picked Silent Hill and Silent Hill Revelation. Came out 2006, 2012. It's based on the video game. I didn't play the video game, so I can't tell you if it's similar. And Karen, yes, The Exorcist is also one of my favorite horror films. I was telling Nicole about that film earlier, that it's really scary. Anyway, so Silent Hill stars Radha Mitchell, a model turned actress, Sean Bean, who was in Lord of the Rings, amongst others, and Laurie Holden, who was in The Walking Dead, before she was in The Walking Dead. So what is this movie about, right? So I want to tell you that it is straight up gory, right? It's scary. It's, I don't want to say fantastical, but it's definitely more of the supernatural than the other films that we've discussed. So Sharon, she's a daughter of Rosalind Christopher. She was adopted. She has these nightmares and she does sleepwalking, but she constantly talks about this place called Silent Hill when she's dreaming. And in an attempt to stop her daughter from these horrible nightmares, she decides to actually bring her to Silent Hill, which sounds like a terrible idea when you say it out loud, to try to get her to maybe address these issues, right? So they go on their way. The father doesn't want them to go. They encounter this police officer, Sybil, who's Laurie Holden. And it turns out that Silent Hill is an alternate dimension where Sharon's other ego, Alyssa, lives, right? And you go, what? So Silent Hill, like, there's a big coal mining fire, and it demolishes town. So there's a lot of ash and fog and all that stuff. And there's sort of like this huge like fire alarm that goes off, like, you know, those loud ones throughout the town, like a fire alarm. And when that happens, it sort of goes to this alternate universe where sort of these creatures come out. It's very otherworldly. You don't want to be there because you can die. So you find out that this girl Alessa in Silent Hill was murdered because a group called the Brethren believed that she needed to be purified, quote unquote. And sort of what this sort of unleashed Sharon and this other alternate universe, right? So I don't want to give too much away, okay? But there is a character called the Pyramid Head, and that should tell you everything. He does not have a name, but he has a giant pyramid on his head and this cleaver, and it's frightening. Like you look at it and you think it's funny, but then you're like, oh my god, this guy's not funny. He's scary. And I have to say, when I first saw it, I didn't know what to expect. I thought it would be like moody, atmospheric, but it was like crazy, gory. And the ending, I was like, oh my god, I did not see that coming. And that's all I have to say. I'm not going to give too much away, but for those who like a little bit of gore or who's not scared of it, I would recommend Silent Hill because it is straight up creepy, scary, gory. I would say it's like Hellraiser, kind of that kind of like creepy creatures. Silent Hill Revelation. You go back there, it's a different, you know, the father, and then it's the same father. Sean Bean's in it, and it's just a little bit different. Actually, I forgot his name, but he is from Game of Thrones. He's in it. It's also very good. So you take these two out, you'll be happy you did. So next film, oh, Sinister. Okay, so like I said, you take Sinister, Insidious, and The Conjuring, and you'll be set, right? So Sinister is rated R. It has Ethan Hawke in it, as you can see. And so it's about this true crime writer. The first one is about this true crime writer, Ellison Oswald. He moves into this house with their son and their daughter. And so this guy, he's an author. He wrote a best-selling book. He hasn't written anything good in a while. So he bought this house and moved his family into it. Little did they know, the family, but you know, Ellison knew that the home that he bought and moved his family into, the family was murdered. Okay, and you're like, oh my god, who would do this? This crazy guy. So they're all hanged by ropes on a tree in the backyard. So Ellison intended to use the case of this family for his new book, right? And you're like, that's just a bad idea. It is a bad idea because Ellison finds a box in the attic that contains a projector and several reels of Super 8 millimeter footage as home movies. Now, I can just tell you right now, anything with like Super 8 and horror is just no good. So what these home movies really are families being murdered. And you go, ugh, not good. So he enlists a professor, a police officer in his research. And I don't want to give too much away, but lo and behold, they find out that there's like these drawings of each and every one of them, and that they nicknamed Mr. Boogie. And that is just not good. So it's sort of about like what happens after that, what happens to the family, who is this Mr. Boogie guy? I tell you, it's just not good for the family or any family. And that same can be said for Sinisters 2, which is a new family. But it's very good. There's a lot of jump scares. There is a little bit of scenes of explicit gore. You know, not too bad. I wouldn't say it's anything that you wouldn't expect from a horror film, but it is like spooky. So if you want to just have, you know, some jump scares, some fright, watch it in the dark, I would say it's a good time. Unlike this movie, which is gross.
I love this movie. Slither is from 2006, and it was directed by James Gunn. And originally I had watched it because Nathan Fillion was in it. And I love him, of course. And Elizabeth Banks is in it, and Michael Rooker. And it's an alien/zombie comedy. But it is firmly in the gross movie category. It is really disgusting. And honestly, I have actually seen this movie a couple of times since it came out. And when I rewatched it this past month, it is the only one out of the 20-something movies that I watched that gave me nightmares. So that's a good endorsement, I guess. So the movie opens when a meteorite lands in this small town in the woods. A husband, his name is Grant, and he's played by Michael Rooker. He goes to check it out, and he's kind of like stung by an alien insect, I guess is a good way to put it. And he starts mutating into this disgusting squid beast. Again, I don't know how else to describe them, but he has like tentacles sticking out of his head and his arm and a big sluggy tail. And then there's these little alien slug things that you see in the picture. They go into the town, and the way that they infect you is that they go into your mouth. And that's really one of the most disgusting parts of the whole movie is gross, but it's actually like a funny movie. Nathan Fillion and Elizabeth Banks have really good chemistry, and I like it. I think it's good.
That just sounds awful. Awful in a good way, but still awful.
Yeah. I made my husband watch it, and he hated me for it.
Yeah, I can see why that would give you nightmares. I feel like a lot of things with like orifices give nightmares. Like the same with aliens. Yeah. Like there's a lot of like goes through the mouth, and you're just like, oh God. It's primal. I think it's a primal fear, yes. But okay, moving on. We're nearing the end, so don't worry. Okay.
Right. So, this was a great movie that actually Sarah told me about. It's a Korean zombie movie from 2016. And it has a lot of different aspects to it. Like it's funny and scary, and there's, like feelings in there. So the guy on the cover, he is a divorced investment manager, and he is accompanying his daughter, who he's running with, on a bullet train ride to see her mother since they're divorced. So while they're on the train, there's a viral outbreak of some sort, and one of the people who has the virus gets on the train, and it turns out that she's turning into a zombie. So then the outbreak is on the train. So really what it is a group of them meet up. They figure out what's going on. They're hiding in one of the cars in the front of the train to get away from the zombies. And at one point they have to get off the train, and there's an amazing train station scene. And they're fighting the zombies, and they're learning about how the human race is all, selfish, and then how they're not selfish. So it's really like the best and the worst of people. And the way that the zombies transform might be my favorite zombie transformation that I've ever seen in any movie. Like I loved it. And yeah, there's some really good action scenes in it, and I highly recommend it.
Yeah, it's a good flick.
I love Korean films, but this one was really great.
I feel like it was terrifying, exhilarating, and a nonstop thrill ride.
Yeah.
All right. But it's so true. It went fast, right? It was a good film.
It did.
Yeah. Okay. So, all right. So I don't know if you guys heard about this movie. It's called Tusk. So I'm just gonna preface this by saying Justin Long is in it. Michael Parks, Haley Joel Osment is in it. And this was started off in a podcast with Nicole, help me out. Who did Silent Bob?
Oh, Kevin Smith.
Yeah, so this is a Kevin Smith film. So this started out as a bit of a joke, and then it sort of evolved into a real movie. So it's not a funny film, but I have to say it's disturbing. It disturbed me. It's not particularly gory, but it stayed with me. It didn't give me nightmares, but every now and again, I will think about this movie, and I think that's a good thing. So, you know what? I think everyone should watch it just so they can talk about it with me, okay? Because it will stay with you, and it will make you think. So, the premise of the movie is Wallace and Teddy are these two guys. They host a podcast where they interview people that are in viral videos, right? So Wallace, who's played by Justin Long, goes to travel to Canada to interview someone, but the person that they want to interview, they cannot. However, in the meanwhile, this guy, Howard Howe, slips him this note saying, if you want someone to really interview, come to this house, whatever. So he goes to this house, he meets this guy, Howard. He's a weird old recluse, right? And he starts telling him this strange tale about how a walrus saved his life, and he named this walrus Mr. Tusk, right? And you're like, okay, what's happening here? Well, Wallace is thinking the same thing because he gets drugged, he gets knocked out, and he wakes up, he freaks out because he's like, why did this guy knock me out? Why am I drugged? He does a call for help to Teddy and his Wallace's girlfriend. They get this voicemail. They go to Canada to look for him, right? Where they are helped by Mr. Johnny Depp, who plays I don't say Mountie, but he plays a police officer. So I don't want to give too much away, but let me just tell you, they find Wallace, and then the ending will leave you thinking. That's all I'm going to say, because I really don't want to give away too much. But you guys have to watch it, because like I said, it's not really gory, but it's creepy, all right? It's a creepy movie. It's rated R, so it's not for kids, and it's going to last with you, because you're just going to be, it's like a WTF moment. You're like, what did I just watch? And I think that's a good indication of a good horror flick, right? So, Nicole, if you did not see this, you have to watch this.
Add it to my list.
No, seriously, it's not gory. It's just it's like it stays with your head. It's disturbing. It's a disturbing film. Okay. So that is the last movie for me. So let's see. I think Nicole has one more.
Yeah, and I'm kind of wishing I didn't put this on here because I honestly hated this movie.
That's good. Oops, sorry. What not to watch?
Yeah, what not to watch. I think that's really why I did it. So it's the classic Werewolf, 1941. Claude Rains is in it. He's actually the one who played the Invisible Man. And so the premise is...
Bela Lugosi, your favorite.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So Larry, he goes home to his father's castle in Wales, and they're like, oh, he meets a beautiful woman, but they don't tell you how he meets her. And I think this is my issue with the movie, is the way that the men treat the women, and I have a problem with this time period. But he's in his castle with this giant telescope, and he's watching this woman in the town through her bedroom window. And he sees her, and he's like, oh, I'm falling in love. So he goes and bothers her, and he's just creeping her out. And then, of course, she's like, oh, and that bothers me too. But so they go together to a carnival and meet this mysterious gypsy fortune teller. And then there's one of the gypsies turns into a wolf and bites someone else. And then, so it's just a lot of running around. But I guess for what it is, it's really not a bad movie. I just take issues with some of it.
Right. Yeah. I'm not a huge fan of like older horror films. Like they don't translate very well for me. Like very few do, because they rely on, I think, sight.
Yeah.
Not gags, but special effects. And we are lucky to be in a period where our special effects are very good. So
yeah.
Yeah.
But I have to say, and these aren't on the list, but my two favorite films that I didn't put on here, one of them is The Abominable Dr. Phipes with Vincent Price from 1971. And it's like another classic madman movie. This guy is like picking off doctors one by one, and he doesn't really say much, but the music is excellent. The costumes are beautiful. The story's pretty good, like how they tell the story, and it's fun, kind of like a dry humor. But the other one that I really liked was Nosferatu, the original 1922 silent film, which had intertitles and a symphony. And I just liked it because the acting was actually very good for it, but they used shadows a lot to tell the story. So like you see like the hand Nosferatu's creepy hand coming on the wall. But that being said, John Malkovich and Willem Dafoe made a movie, like 20 years ago called Shadow of the Vampire, which is a fictionalized version of the making of Nosferatu, which is actually really good. It's not a horror movie, but I highly suggest it because they use original footage from the 22 movie.
Ah, that's good. So you should get that and Nosferatu.
Yes. Yeah, I definitely watch Nosferatu first and then watch Shadow of the Vampire.
All right. So I believe that is it. So I hope you guys, or we hope you guys enjoyed this. And if you wanted to discuss any films, please do so in the chat. Or if you want to talk about anything, we can unmute you. But yeah, I mean, Nicole, if you had to choose one film out of all of yours to say you must watch, what do you think it would be?
Train to Busan.
Train to Busan. All right. Yep, that's good. And I would have to say mine would be, of course, Alien, but I think a lot of people saw Alien. So I would go with The Descent. Because that is like so creepy on so many levels. But all right. So like I said, all of these films that Nicole Lucas and I discussed will be available at Middle Country. And please note that we are doing 31 Days of Fall on our social media accounts. So please look for that. Karen said that she loves Silence of the Lambs. Oh, that's a good one. Scream, The Ring, and Candyman. Those are all classics. Silence of the Lamb is an oldie but goodie. Steph likes The Others with Steph. That is with Steven Tyler's daughter, Liv. Right, Liv Tyler. Oh, Nicole Kidman. Oh, Nicole Kidman. That's a ghost story. Bird Box. That was good. The Others, yeah, is the Victorian like ghost story. That was good. That had a nice twisty ending. We probably do have those movies in the library as well. So anyway, so we hope that you guys enjoyed this. We went a little bit long, so we'll let you guys go. But thank you for joining us. And oh wait, Karen said, "I know what you did last summer." Yeah, oldie but goodie. That's a good one too. Did you see that one, Nicole?
I don't remember.
It's like a teen. It's like kind of like Scream. I want to say like that kind of vein. It's like
Scream. I saw it like 3 times.
Yeah, right.
But I remember when I Know What You Did Last Summer came out, but I don't think I actually saw it.
Steph said that it made her afraid of fishermen as a kid. That's funny. Yeah, there were 3. I Know What You Did Last Summer. 3 summers. We did all 3 summers. All right, so thank you guys, and we hope you have a good night. And like I said, please enjoy all of these horror films. And you can catch Nicole and I here at the library if you want to discuss them. So thank you.
Thanks, guys.
Bye.